First of all, hello, and thank you for coming in such a big number to the presentation and to this conference. It is actually a joy to see that the cybersecurity community has grown quite well in Cluj-Napoca since we started to learn penetration testing and security 6-7 years ago. We were basically having very few people to discuss, and now it's a room full of people. That's very nice. So the presentation that I proposed is attacking and defending Active Directory. Basically, I wanted to include what are the attacks that currently work in Active Directory environment, or at least the ones that we discovered, and some defenses that can countermeasure those attacks. Before I start, I wanted to ask how many of you work in offensive security? Real pentesting, attacking? 1%, 2%? And on the other side, defensive, IT support or IT security, 2-3%. Okay. So the others, I suppose you are management or cybersecurity wannabes. Do you want to learn cybersecurity? Pen testing. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so if there are any questions, you can address them at the end of the presentation. It's a bit technical at some point. Okay, so very simple. What we're going to talk today is our introduction to Active Directory, a very short introduction, at least to all have the same. We all have the same theoretical base and ways of attacking Active Directory, and for each attack that I chose, a small defense. The measures that can protect against this attack, if there are, and just a short conclusion after the presentation. Okay, to introduce myself, I'm Andrei. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I have about 6 years of experience in pen testing. I started, and I come from application security, not network necessarily. Web application, Android or mobile, IoT security, and on a daily basis I do about 1 pen test per week. About that, maybe sometimes 2 pen tests per week, and a lot of other cybersecurity projects like dark web cyber monitoring or forensic investigations for breaches. This is what I do on a daily basis. I'm the co-founder of Cyber Threat Defense, together with another 2 colleagues. Yeah, this is about me. Okay, to introduce this presentation. So, as a short definition, Active Directory is basically, we can say, a tool installed on a central server on a network, which is called domain controller, in which, using Active Directory, the IT guys especially can manage the entire network. And when I say entire network, I mean users, computers, printers, file shares, security groups, and many other things. But this is a good definition to start from. It's basically a database that contains a lot of information about those objects. The main purpose is to handle security authentication and to configure what user should access what. The permissions and all that are stored in Active Directory and are configured from there. The most common task that Active Directory users do is reset passwords, create and delete user, and setting permissions. This is like the screen that they see a lot of times on a day. And this is why it makes it very important from a security point of view. This is how it looks, anyway. Part of the authentication in a Windows environment is based, at least in most of the cases, on the two protocols, Kerberos and NTLM, in which each computer basically communicates with the domain controller, with the main server, or there could be more servers, but we can narrow it at one server for this presentation. And using these protocols, basically, a user can authenticate in a network. If you know at your job, I suppose that most of you work in IT, and you have one account at your job in which you log in multiple places at your PC, in multiple websites from your internal network. This is basically connected to Active Directory, and it's managed from that point. Okay, straight to the point, attacking Active Directory. The main goal of attacking Active Directory is to obtain domain admin or enterprise admin, or depending on each company, this is custom sometimes, and most of the times. You want to take admin control over the central server, which is basically a Windows server. So think about it like that. The second goal, which is more like the goal of a hacker, so the first one is the goal of a pentester, to take the admin. The goal of a hacker is to have access to sensitive data, which is emails, documents, secret data, crown jewels of each company. So both of these are the goals. How does it work from end to end in attacking Active Directory? First of all, it starts from, I don't know if you see very well, but the first point is an external reconnaissance, which means basically a hacker targets an external host or external asset of a company, like website. It could be anything from the DMZ, servers, web servers, email servers, even employees, emails of their employees, anything that is external. Reconnaissance means to discover more information about it. And once that information is discovered, it can be attacked in multiple ways from external point of view, from external network. Once one PC is compromised, for example, at your job, if your computer is compromised, then it starts a process of internal reconnaissance, meaning that the hacker, or in your case the pentester, if you do pentesting, tries to understand what is the computer that it was compromised. What exactly permissions that computer has. Is the computer of the IT guy, the IT admin, or is the computer of any employee? What are the permissions that it has? And from that point, it goes to an entire cycle in which it tries to escalate the privileges. So many times in a company, the employee doesn't have the full control over its computer. Someone else has admin privileges on that, and the hacker tries to become admin on the server. And from that point on, I will skip some steps, but from hacking one PC, the hacker will try to navigate to other PCs, especially to the domain controller, which is the main server from each network, in order to obtain the admin access. This is basically the flow, which it repeats until it's found, the admin is found, and it ends with the exfiltration of data, which means that the sensitive data that is wanted from a company could be all user credentials or user accounts from all employees or whatever. It's exfiltrated to a remote server somewhere that the hacker wants. This is basically the attack kill chain. The classic intrusion scheme is basically most of the time, and I don't know if you know this, but only 4% of hacking happens because of technical vulnerabilities. 96%, most of the, I think 96%, I'm not sure about that, but happens through social engineering, which means phishing and infecting with malware, basically files that you open and install it in your PC, or they install themselves, depends on the type of the malware. But the classic intrusion schema means a hacker attacks an employee. Okay, so as I mentioned, once some access is found, the next steps are persistence, trying to remain there on the server, not to lose access, not get caught by an antivirus or a firewall, and further try to escalate access until the target is achieved. Okay, the it's 4 attacks and some other just mentions. 4 types of attacks that we found very often to be working into Active Directory's environment. We'll go directly to the first one. SMB shares mining, which basically means to go through open SMBs, open shares that are shared across the network. When I mean share, I mean specific a folder, or could be a server, or could be an entire partition like C, that you have partition D on your computer. You can share it with someone else, and the other computers can access that. So in a big network especially, there are so many open shares, open folders, in which hackers can go and effectively collect all kinds of information. There are all documents, including passwords or scripts and configuration files. I actually had one case in which I found an SQL dump file, which is an SQL file that basically extracts all the data from, it's like a backup file of an SQL, in which it contained all the credentials of all admins on the entire network. It was just stored there, including multiple web applications, internal web application credentials. This happens a lot. Maybe it's not necessarily password, but it helps you to find information about all kinds of other hosts on the network. There are some tools that you can use. There are different permissions in SMB share files, share folders, so you can view data, or you can actually modify it if that's permitted based on your user. And depending on the machine that you hacked, you can find different results with different users. I forgot to mention one thing at this point, that in the current presentation, the first phases, the ones that come from before compromised machine, are not taken into consideration. So we are going directly as we have already hacked a machine on the network. So the presentation goes from that point on. The reason why this happens is because as a penetration tester, most of the time you are given an account, an employee account in your Active Directory. So you're not, unless this is a scope to penetrate the network, most of the times you are given an account to start testing from that point. This happens because it takes a lot of time to get inside a network, and depends on the pentest type. But most of the time you have an account. So we are starting from the point where we already hacked into a computer, but we are not having admin access. When looking into an OpenSMB folder, this one is just an example from the internet. You can see all kinds of files. In this case, if you look here, there's a temp folder which contains some files user.txt or all kinds of other files that we can read and see what's inside of them. Yeah, this is a very easy vulnerability to hack. It's very tedious because, as I said, there are many open folders, and to go. Sometimes you have to go manually through many of them. You can do it automatic, but many times you have to go manually, and there's a lot of data to look into, especially if you find some financial or the SME of the HR guys. Yeah. Okay, so to mitigate this, there is no straightforward solution. You have to either configure the firewall of the specific server to block the ports and access to SMB. Or also, recurrent pen testing is recommended because as a pen tester, you will always look into this kind of vulnerabilities and you will discover where are those problems, especially on the permission level. Yeah, and recommendation is to remove the sensitive data from any shared data and never add those data, especially. Okay, the second vulnerability is a credential theft shuffle, or I saw this this name on the internet, Mimikatz dance. It says like that because you have to dance through multiple computers until you find the actual domain admin. How does it work? I don't know if you ever heard of Mimikatz. Has anyone heard of? Yeah, some of you did. Yeah. Okay. Well, so Mimikatz is basically maybe the most used tool for credentials discovery, or I can say, or credential dumping, and also lateral movement inside the network. Lateral movement means moving to one computer to another. And how does this credential theft works? Basically, so you compromise a PC, you have some access to a PC, not admin, or you manage to have admin, then you try to dump the credentials. I will show you how Mimikatz dumps the credentials from the memory of the PC and from other places. And using those memories, those passwords, you will move to one station to another. And you do this until you find a domain admin. I will show you how this happens. So an attacker finds PC1, finds some credentials there, or some tokens, I will show you immediately, and moves to PC2, does the same thing again, gathers the credentials until he can move to a domain admin user PC. Okay, this is, Mimikatz as a tool. What it does, it dumps passwords from memory, even hashes, and Kerberos tickets. And as I said, it allows lateral movement. Why is this working? Why can you? So what it happens is you install Mimikatz, you dump the credentials from the memory, and sometimes, and it happens many times actually, you download the credentials of the domain admin user. So basically, you find, could be in your PC at your office, you find the password or at least the token, the hash of the password of the admin, domain admin. Why is this happening? It's happening because there are many times when the admins of the network connect to a specific PC, log into that, and the moment they log in, their credentials are stored in LSAS, which is basically the secure memory of the PC. So it gets stored there, the credential. And if you run Mimikatz, which looks into that place and the memory is placed, it finds the password and offers it to you. This is how it looks. I don't know if you see to the back. Basically, the command is secure LSA, log on passwords. You execute this. So you take the machine, you download your Mimikatz, and execute this command. And on the machine that you have downloaded, you can see whatever it brings. For example, it brings NTLM tokens, and in case this is possible, plain text passwords. Okay. So you do this process. what can you do? I mean, we'll explain it immediately, but you do this process until you find that the admin of the domain controller. What else can you do with Mimikatz? There are some other techniques which are very common to people who do network pentest, is passing the hash. So the NTLM that you just saw before, basically this one, you can take it, and if this one is, for example, an admin of your PC, that could also be the same as other PC in the network. There are many times where the local admins have the same password. You can ask to Mimikatz to pass the hash, meaning that it sends this hash to pass the hash. Basically, it says that I'm already authenticated. Provide me access to different servers that you want to go on the network, and this is the command pth. You have to mention the user. In this case, it's administrator, and the NTLM hash. So you basically don't know the password. You only know the encryption of the password. This is how this technology works. And say the domain of or the PC that you want to authenticate, or maybe send the command. In this case, you can open, for example, the command line as an administrator on a specific server without knowing the password. This is the pass the hash technique. Yeah, this is the diagram. Nothing to explain, it's the same as I said. And okay, the other method in the same way is passing the ticket. Passing the ticket refers to the other protocol, the authentication protocol. The first one was NTLM, the second one that I mentioned is Kerberos. It's the same principle. You find the token after you execute Mimikatz in the memory, you find the token and pass it to another server until you get access to that server. Or send a command, or depends on what you want. The third method is passing the key. So this is a bit tricky maybe to understand, but not quite. It actually says, so you're sending an NTLM hash, sending an NTLM hash, passing the NTLM hash to domain controller to receive a Kerberos token. I mean, to move basically from one authentication protocol to another. Why do you want to do this? I mean, you can use this in networks where NTLM protocol is disabled, which I didn't found yet, but just to know about this. Yeah. So in this example, we can see that, for example, using Mimikatz, we managed to pass the hash of the administrator to a domain, and we open a command prompt as an administrator, as only the admin has access to system 32. And if we look at the interceptor, we can see that even though we sent the hash, pass the hash, which is an NTLM protocol, in the interceptor, we can see that we have I don't know how to say that in English. User of the Kerberos that basically says you authenticated with Kerberos, not with NTLM. Yeah. Okay, how to mitigate this? And I think this is the most. I think this is one of the biggest problems of network security nowadays, and I think it has always been. So when administrators authenticate to other users' computer, or they run programs as administrators on other users' computer, they basically share their credentials. And this happens like most of the time. And how to mitigate this? First of all, do not authenticate with your account into servers or computers of employees or anywhere where files can be downloaded or emails, because they can download such software that is, as I mentioned. There are many others. And also you can configure group policy in admin to prevent local administrator to authenticate over the network to certain PCs, but you have to test this because it will be a problem when we're talking about clustering the domain controllers. So you will not be able to authenticate to others' domain controllers if you set this policy not correct. Okay, so first, don't authenticate, and if it's possible, have a separate admin workstation for administrator activities, so only admins log into that station for specific administrative tasks. No, they don't log into other stations. Okay, and this is a bit old vulnerabilities. Password in sys volume and groups policy preferences. Basically, sys volume is the domain share. I mean, it's like the share where every user in the network has access if they are authenticated. And it can contain all kinds of scripts, group policy, and it's found that it can be found here at this address in all the computers. I mean, if a user is authenticated. And many times it happens or it happened, as I said, this was a bit old vulnerabilities, to administrator to execute scripts that were meant for the entire network or for all the PCs in the network, and they needed to have admin permissions to run the scripts, and they hard-coded their passwords and a user took the scripts, and once they did that, you can go and search for it because the sys volume is the share of the entire network, so you can access that. Yeah, it happened in the past a lot. There are multiple files where to look for. Of course, there are tools that do this automatically, and I don't know for sure, but I think that Mimikatz does this also. It looks into these files. I'm not sure exactly. Okay, this is how the file look. For example, one example of file. The passwords. I mean, Microsoft has inserted the patch to encrypt the passwords in sys volume, but what it did is also it published the encryption key. And the encryption key is, you can find it on the internet, even though the password is encrypted with AES-256, the key is public to decrypt it. And it can be decrypted with different kind of scripts. This one, GPD crypt. Okay. To mitigate this risk, you first have to install the package that was fixing this vulnerability. Delete existing GP. I mean, because installing the package doesn't delete the previous files that were already configured, so they need to be deleted manually. And I saw that installing some endpoint protection software, like different antiviruses, they somehow managed to replace the passwords with some kind of hidden keys. You cannot see it. Also, Microsoft has the Labs plugin, like I say, which helps you to manage the passwords of admins, and so most of the scripts are used for managing the passwords, and this plugin helps you to manage it in a secure manner. Don't know too much about it. Okay, and one last vulnerability, it's Kerberos, which it's quite a complicated functionality, but what it means is you can brute force the hashes of the Kerberos services, and the idea is that once you get the Kerberos tokens of the services, you can decrypt them locally, so you don't have to continuously interact with the server, and you can just download the hash and decrypt it locally. And especially if there are Kerberos services which are which are created by users or allocated to users, those many times have very weak passwords because users tend to do this, and yeah, it's recommended to start there. So you just download the tokens, the hash, and decrypt it locally, and yeah, you come with the password if that's the case. I didn't do this. I just mentioned it here, but I didn't do this. I mean, in our experience, the first two vulnerabilities were so spreaded. I mean, the ones with the SMB shares and finding sensitive data in all kinds of shares, and using Mimikatz. It's just like in 2 hours you are domain admin on the server. So you don't usually need to do this. Maybe in highly secured environments. Yeah, this is how it looks when you decrypt the hashes. It's down here, but I don't think it's viewable. This one decrypts the hash of MS SQL service. Okay, how to mitigate this? Basically, you have to. I mean, the problem with Kerberos services brute forcing is that the password of those are, they are as maximum as they are configured in Active Directory for users. And if you configure it at 25 characters, which is almost impossible, or maybe impossible nowadays to crack, that's a good mitigation. Okay, so other attacks to be mentioned here. So I come back to my mention that so we are already in a computer. We already hacked a computer, but we are not admin. And we tried, let's say, all that, and it didn't work. So what we can do is to try to hack at least applications that run with admin privileges. For example, I put here Jenkins. Jenkins is a continuous integration tool. So it needs to run as admin because it needs to send commands to the command line. I mean, it creates all kinds of files, and so trying to hack into that, which sometimes works either by brute forcing the authentication, or I think last year it had an exploit, a 0-day, in which in some versions of Jenkins, you could authenticate as administrator without knowing the password, or either you could replace the password. So yeah, this kind of software come with vulnerabilities. If you manage to hack into that, you can execute the commands with admin privileges without being admin. And sometimes you don't even need to hack the administrator of the Jenkins. You can hack a user that can just configure a step inside the continuous integration phase. Okay, so other vulnerabilities. This was an old one also. It's not. We didn't find it anymore. It was a missing patch. I mean, the vulnerability actually says missing patches in domain controller. So the admin server, has some missing patches, missing updates that are related to security. For example, that one was offering you. It's just an exploit that you can execute and offers admin privileges on the domain, just like that, because the server is vulnerable to that. But yeah, that's old, and I don't think you can find it. Maybe in very old or less mature networks from a security point of view. Also, on your local machine, you can exploit vulnerable software. This is common to have users or employees to have installed some old software which is vulnerable and can offer you admin on the server, and so on. And also, this one we also find very often. In order to move to a server to another, legacy systems, which is basically systems that are very old, like Windows XP or Windows Vista, which have, I mean, they're like vulnerability by design. Vulnerable by design, yeah. So you sometimes just download an exploit or just execute it with Metasploit, and you are inside that. And most of the times you are directly admin in the server. Okay, a little about persistence. I don't know if I passed my time. No. A little about persistence. The concept of golden tickets, which is almost untraceable. Once you have admin on the server, domain admin, you are already an administrator, but you want to persist your access in order to someone not, I mean, the IT guys or the IT admin not to find you, not to discover your account, or not to discover that you, I mean, maybe you accessed the account at 6 p.m. after the daily schedule, and the next day he thinks, okay, who accessed my account at 6 p.m.? And you don't want to do this. Once you have access to the domain controller, you can push a golden ticket, which basically means that so in order to have a golden ticket or to have a Kerberos ticket, the user that tries to obtain the ticket is authorized by the account which is called KRBTGT, which is the kind of a hidden account inside the domain controller that can basically, this is what it does. It authorizes the tokens and it encrypts the tokens, the Kerberos tokens for each user. And what you do, once you have admin on the domain controller, so you're basically already an admin, you can use the hash of that account, which is hidden and basically some kind of forgot, and obtain yourself a golden ticket, a Kerberos ticket, which is in which you can access everything with it. Maybe I can. So in this case, I'm already an administrator on the domain controller, and using get_add_user script, I can have the KPTG user hash and use it in this case also with Mimikatz to create a golden ticket, in which basically it creates a Kerberos token for you that you have a complete admin over the entire network. And the thing is that this golden ticket is not quite traceable. And why am I saying that? It's a valid ticket as you are already authenticated as a normal user having your own Kerberos ticket, and it's normal. It's like you having complete access, but anyway, it's there. I mean, this user already has access to everything on the network, and it's basically untraceable, except that in some cases, I mean, I think this is what it happens by default. Mimikatz, it creates the ticket with the validity of around 10 years by default. And this is the trick where you can get caught, because if the admin looks at the golden ticket's validity, is the only one who has 10 years and the others have 1 month or so. So this is the principle. Here, already having, I mean, here I'm a user, normal user, and in this case, with the same, no, by pushing the golden ticket, you have, basically you can see whatever is in any other server. This is the domain server address. I don't know if can be seen, and you can simply push the golden ticket and you can view any server. So the whole idea of this is, I mean, this is a bit more complex than I explained, but the whole idea is that you have your own ticket which says you are a valid user over the entire network, which the user anyway it existed anyway, and you have access to everything without having the possibility of getting caught. But the idea is to already have complete admin over the network. So the only thing is not to get caught, not the idea of access. How to mitigate this? As I said, it's very difficult. As I said, in case they are created with a very long lifespan, they might get caught. But if you catch someone else's golden ticket, you must reset the account twice in order to generate a new golden ticket for this account. So this account is like a hidden account which has access everywhere. Just to have in mind this. It's maybe hard to explain sometimes because we usually just execute it, and when you start to get into details, you see that not even you didn't understand it completely. Yeah. Okay, so some kind of a conclusion. Basically, compromising an Active Directory admin account, it means compromising the entire network. And the reason why I'm saying that this is that if you have admin account on the main server that has access everywhere, you can download all the accounts of all the employees, all the other admins, there are many testers which are more than one admins. And using tricks like golden ticket, you can persist your access like a lot of time. There's a saying, once domain admin, always domain admin. And yeah, your Active Directory or the Active Directory is secure as the most weak endpoint in the network. That's, I think, the whole idea. And the most vulnerabilities come from human error, as I said, for example, in SMB, and also in authenticating into other users' computer with your domain admin account, and from technology limitations like golden ticket. I mean, it's hard to catch because this is how the entire infrastructure is built. Thank you. If you have any questions.
So you said that in some cases Mimikatz can down the credentials of a user, so the clear text passwords. So when does Windows store these passwords in clear text?
How does it store them?
When? I think you must configure it somehow so it stores the password, or it must be misconfigured, right? Because normally you wouldn't want to store clear text passwords.
Yeah. So as I said, Mimikatz downloads the passwords from the memory, from the computer memory, and I don't know exactly what's the process there, but I mean, in the memory, they're not always stored secured. There are different protocols of communication or maybe authentication on Windows networks that do not store credentials encrypted. There was one, but I don't recall it now, which always you find it on clear text is as I can search for it and I can answer after the more precisely. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, the whole idea is that not you store credentials somewhere on the disk, but you authenticate. It stores the last authentications on the server, on the memory, and takes it from there. That's the basic. But you can see it's far more complex than this. It has a lot of other plugins. Any other question? Okay, then I will be at the 6th floor at the CTF if you want to come and see the guys hacking, or if you have any question, I can answer there. Thank you.